This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
You know that music. That is James MENNIE of the Montreal Gazette. James, last time we spoke in January, early January, we were commiserating about how François Legault was mishandling the management of the virus, and I actually missed those times. I can't believe it.
Well, it's true. There wasn't a war on. But the good news, David,
there wasn't a fascist uprising in Ottawa.
No, and the country, wasn't looking over its shoulder, wondering if that's not really a shooting star overhead, but a Russian ICBM. Listen, it's kind of funny you mention that, because I was thinking about that as well. How things can turn on a dime these days, and it occurred to me that for a lot of our listeners, this is taking them back a very, very long time, perhaps to their early childhoods. This year will mark the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that, of course, was a standoff between the U.S. and the then Soviet Union over the deployment of missiles on the island of Cuba, which was, with a good tailwind, you could spit into Miami from the coast of Cuba.
13 days in October.
Wow,
13 days in October.
And it's been all, they've made all kinds of movies and documentaries about it. But what I find intriguing, and I think this is something that's being revived, depending on your demographic, you can remember growing up in the shadow of that. You can remember understanding that what did happen on the side, the far side of the world was important. It mattered because if a war broke out, the front line was your front yard. There is no rear echelon anymore. And I think that was really brought home 60 years ago, because people suddenly realized, listen, the memories of the Second World War were still very fresh back then, that wars up until then had been something that happened far away. You would fight in a war, but it was always someplace else. It certainly wasn't in your backyard. But now we have that situation brought front and center. We've been living under that shadow, as I said, for more than 60 years. But what I find intriguing in all of this as well is you still have people who haven't quite figured out the math, who are still, and don't get me wrong, virtually everybody else in this country, I fully support Ukraine. I think this is, I've described Putin's invasion as an example of Hitlerian aggression. There's no other word for it. But the fact is, when people start saying, "Well, no, we have to have a no-fly zone over Ukraine," you have to be able to enforce that, and you enforce that by shooting down any aircraft that go into your no-fly zone. Which, of course, if NATO gets tangled up, if we get tangled up in that, we are a part of that war. And as I say, you can't turn around and say, "Well, I'll just sit in my study, from the comfort of behind my keyboard, and say, well, this is what we should be doing, and this has got to end." It does have to end. And we've seen how everybody in the West, I've rarely seen the West so unified on anything whatsoever, and in so short a time. But the fact remains that one wrong move with an increasingly apparently lunatic leader like Vladimir Putin, and this can go south very, very quickly. And it's kind of funny, because when you talk to people who had no idea of or who never sort of had to confront this, even though I say it's always been there, but it's never been a part of our daily lives, they kind of look at you rather quizzically and say, "Well, no, that couldn't happen." And the fact of the matter is, yes, it could, because we were talking maybe 3 weeks ago, and certainly if somebody said to me, "Well, Putin's going to launch a full-blown invasion of Ukraine," I would have said, "Well, no, I don't think so," because that would be completely ridiculous. And yet, David, here we are, not talking about the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, but about the possibility that this war can get bigger and bloodier very, very quickly.
On that note,
well, listen. The good news is, if you believe the Legault government, there ain't no COVID no more.
No, 1,300 cases. Sure, talk to frontline healthcare workers. We're done. We're done.
Exactly.
Moving on, I was talking about this on the podcast, the Big Five podcast with Elias this morning. The Anglo Rights Party idea is gaining some traction. So, of course, you all know, everybody knows, I'm a Franco. I'm not an Anglo. I try to be an honorary Anglo, but I am a Franco. So the idea here, I'm thinking the best way to change things is from within and put pressure from within the Liberal Party. Am I completely off the rails here, or should we think that this is, again, the way to go and have yet another party, another single-issue party, because this would be the fifth one if you count all the opposition parties right now?
Yeah.
Is that the way to go?
I have to tell you, my how can I put it? My acquaintance with the Equality Party is rather interesting because the year that they were elected, and I was covering that election campaign, and I would go out, and I believe, I don't know if Robert Libman's listening right now, but I think it still stands. You're talking to the first reporter ever to interview Robert Libman about politics.
Cool.
And I kept going back to the newsroom at the Gazette, and I kept saying, guys, something is up here. Something's, and of course it was, no, it's just angry phones. Don't worry about it. Flash in the pants, but, we have to be fair. We have to cover them. And I remember on election night, we had decided not to cover the Equality Party at all. When we had a lot more reporters back then than we do now. But we decided, no, we're not going to deploy any reporters with the Equality Party. We just want to stick with then the big three, right? It was like the Liberals and the PQ plus somebody else to be named later, but certainly not the Equality Party.
Exactly.
And I remember at about 9:45 at night, when it appeared that they were going to elect 4 MNAs. The then managing editor of the newspaper came up to me, and the look on his face was priceless. This was like as if the Soviets had launched a missile. I mean, he says, just get out there. But I find the difference between then and now is that whereas it was clear that people were angry, it was clear that people felt betrayed, and it was clear that people wanted to send a message. I'm not entirely certain as much as we continue to be slapped around. I'm not saying oppressed, but basically slapped around, backhandedly treated by not just this government, but basically a succession of governments up before the CAC. I'm not entirely sure this would be so much a move. A new party, what they're calling an Equality 2.0, would be so much an act of defiance as it is one of resignation. It would be, if this party elects people to the National Assembly, I think it's going to be more because there are enough people out there who figure, I will never be, my interests, my concerns will never be represented by the parties in power right now. So why am I going to throw away my vote? At least this way, I may send someone who, even if they do nothing, even achieve nothing, will at least on a regular basis be able to raise these concerns that normally do not get raised in the mainstream. I mean, Bill 96, a lot of the French media right now, Bill 96 is in the here and now, in 2022, as an issue, is what the Equality was for the Montreal, the Equality Party was for the Montreal Gazette in 1989. It's happening, but it's hardly of any interest to our readers, and we have to deploy our resources on stories we think are important. So an act of resignation, perhaps. I don't sense as much anger, but I do sense a lot of resignation, a lot of saying, listen, we're never going to change. And with all due respect to your suggestion, that the way to work, the way to get change is to work from, say, within the Liberal Party. I will tell you, don't take this personally, David, but I'm not entirely sure by the time, October 4th dawns in this great province of ours, that the Liberals will be, sharing a booth at the local Denny's with the PQ. There's, right now, the way the polls are going, it doesn't look good. I've said it before on the show. It's more like the Liberal Party of Montreal.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that secret formula. I'm not even getting a suggestion that there's some plan other than to perhaps, support something that is perceived perhaps to be important in the regions that's going to help with the numbers. The Liberals have been stuck. I think the last half dozen polls over the last 3 or 4 months, the Liberals have been spot welded into 20%.
Yes, absolutely. So what does it say about, but this situation, the fact that we're talking about this more and more, what does it say about Dominique Anglade's leadership and the way the Liberals are managing the relationship with one of their key bases?
Well, I think the Liberals are going to have to ask themselves, and when I say the Liberals, at this point, we're talking about the caucus, are going to have to determine is this the leader we want to have going into the next election? Because, and this is not a slight to Madame Anglade, but the fact is she's not setting the electorate's imagination on fire. As I say, I think the only change is if this Equality Party 2.0 comes into play, at least on the island of Montreal, which is about the only shadow.
Yeah, sorry. But it's just I have a little time left, and I really want to hear you on this because you're suggesting that the Liberals could do what the Bloc did to Mario Beaulieu a few federal elections ago, seeing that the Bloc was going to be wiped off the map. They put him out of business before an election and brought in Gilles Duceppe, who actually it worked. It actually saved a few seats for the Bloc. Are you suggesting that's something that could happen?
Well, yeah, it's not an expression I use a lot in English, but there's a very common expression in Quebecois French, and I think it's time perhaps for the Liberals to start thinking about saving the furniture, because I'm not entirely sure their fate. I'm not even sure they'll garner the 20% that what we're seeing in the polls right now by the time this is over. And as I was saying before, if this Equality 2.0 gets up and running, you may see even more erosion to that support. But I'm sorry, like I say, maybe it's not Madame Anglade's fault. Maybe she's stuck with a lousy hand, which I can assure you, with the previous management of that party, they did little to endear themselves to the rank and file. And we saw that result in 2018.
James, I can tell you, I've heard this conversation in other liberal circles. This is being discussed. Yeah, let's face it. And so this is definitely something we'll need to talk more about and continue. And
absolutely. And the thing, don't forget, David, I'm not a member of the Liberal Party. I'm not a liberal.
Me neither.
And right now, I'm talking to you from my fallout shelter in my basement.
James, always a great pleasure to talk to you. Have a great bonne fête de semaine, mon cher ami.
Toi aussi, take care of yourself there, because even though COVID's over, you never know.
You never know. Take care.